I'm lifting my glass for another toast when I hear my name from the hallway. The conversation drifts through the partially open door of my father's study, carried by my brother's voice. She finally has enough money to help save our family legacy. Dominic's words hit me like a physical blow. That promotion couldn't have come at a better time. My father's deeper voice follows. Let's not rush this. Clarissa's always been cautious with her finances. We've been discussing this for weeks, my mother says. The Vineyard needs that investment now, not when she's ready. The wine glass slips from my fingers, shattering against the hardwood floor of the dining room. Cabernet splashes across my cream slacks and pools around the broken crystal, our family vineyard's signature vintage, now soaking into the centuries-old oak planks my great-grandfather installed. I stand frozen as the realization washes over me. This celebration dinner, supposedly to honor my promotion at Westbrook Design, was actually staged to soften me up. They've been planning to ask for my money. No, not ask. Expect. My hand trembles as I bend to collect the larger shards of glass. The cut on my finger barely registers as I try to process what I've just heard. $100,000. The exact amount I've saved for my cabin near Yosemite. When I was 12, I'd begged Dad to teach me about wine production alongside Dominic. I remember trailing after them toward the fermentation room, my notebook clutched in my hands. Clarissa, Dad had called over his shoulder. Your mother needs help in the kitchen. This is men's work. I'd watched from the window as he showed Dominic how to test the grapes, how to sense when they were ready for harvest. Later that night, Dominic's C- in science was celebrated with ice cream. My academic award certificate remained stuck to the refrigerator, unremarked. The memory burns as I rise, leaving the broken glass behind. My hands have stopped shaking by the time I push open the study door. 3 heads turn toward me. The silence stretches taut between us. What were you just saying about my finances? I ask, my voice steadier than I feel. Mother recovers first, her smile sliding into place. We're just proud of how well you're doing, dear. That promotion is quite an achievement. I notice something strange. My hands have completely stopped trembling. The familiar anxiety that usually churns in my stomach when confronting my family has quieted. In its place is something unfamiliar. Clarity. I know exactly what you were planning, I say. You've been discussing how to get my money for weeks. For Dominic's tasting room. Mother's smile falters. Dad's chair creaks as he straightens. Your brother has put his whole life into this vineyard, Dad says, his tone hardening. The Matthews name means something in this valley because of his dedication. Dominic leans against the mahogany desk, arms crossed. This isn't just about me. It's about our family legacy. The tasting room expansion could double our revenue. I calculate quickly in my head 6 years of careful saving, working weekends, taking on additional projects. 6 years of independence sacrificed for a brother who's never sacrificed anything for me. That money is for my cabin, I say, my investment in my future. Mother's lips press into a thin line. So you'd put a vacation home above family? It's not a vacation home, it's my future. I meet each of their eyes in turn. And this isn't about family, it's about bailing out Dominic. Again. Dad's face reddens. You've always been selfish, Clarissa. Always thinking about yourself instead of what this family has given you. The accusation hangs in the air between us. What this family has given me. Recognition that always came with conditions. Support that was never quite equal to what Dominic received. Love that felt earned, rather than given. I'm not giving you my money, I say, surprised by the steadiness in my voice. Not 1 cent. Dominic pushes away from the desk. Then maybe you shouldn't consider yourself part of this family's future. The threat lands exactly as intended. Exclusion, the ultimate punishment for failing to comply. For 3 decades, the fear of being cut off from my family has kept me obedient, kept me trying to earn the approval that Dominic receives simply for existing. I look at them, these people who raised me, who shaped me, who are now trying to use me, and something shifts inside my chest. The cost of staying in their good graces has finally become too high. I guess we'll see about that, I say, turning toward the door. Behind me, I hear my mother's sharp intake of breath, my father's muttered curse. But for the first time in my life, I don't look back to gauge their reaction. I don't try to smooth things over. I just keep walking. The next day, at my apartment, the email sits on my laptop screen, its words burning into my retinas like acid. I stagger backward into my desk chair, stomach lurching as though I've been physically struck. Regarding strategies to secure Clarissa's contribution, reads the subject line. The message is from my father to our family financial advisor, who forwarded it to me, with my mother and brother copied. Paul, we need to present this as an opportunity, not a request, my father wrote. Clarissa has always been cautious with her money, too cautious, if you ask me. The promotion puts her in a position where she can finally contribute to the family legacy. We're thinking $100,000 for a 10% stake. My mother's reply follows. Remember to emphasize the family aspect. She's always wanted to be included. The final punch comes from Dominic. Let's call it Dominic's tasting room in the official paperwork. After all, I'm the one who's kept this place going while she's been building her little career. My hands shake as I scroll through weeks of correspondence. They've been planning this ambush for months, calculating the exact moment when my promotion would make me financially viable to them. Not as a daughter or sister, as a resource. I print everything, tucking the pages into a folder. Evidence. The next morning, I park across from the Hartwell & Sons law office, watching my family file inside. They don't know I'm here. After Sunday's confrontation, Mother left 3 voicemails insisting we talk through this misunderstanding like adults. Father hasn't called at all. Through the glass storefront, I can see them arranging themselves around the massive oak table in the conference room. Mother smooths her skirt, Father checks his watch, and Dominic spreads papers across the polished surface. Aunt Martha sits stiffly beside them, her hands folded in her lap. The investment documents are centered precisely in front of an empty chair. My chair. I don't go inside. Instead, I call the office from my car. This is Clarissa Matthews. I'll be joining the meeting by phone only. I'm connected to the speakerphone in the conference room. Clarissa, darling. What's this nonsense? Just come inside. Mother says. I'd prefer to have this conversation with some distance, I reply, surprising myself with my steady voice. Roger Hartwell, our family lawyer since before I was born, clears his throat. Well, we're here to discuss the investment opportunity in Matthews Family Vineyards. Specifically, the expansion project for Dominic's tasting room, I finish for him. Yes, I've seen the emails. A weighted silence falls over the line. Those were private communications. My father finally says, his voice tight. About me. Without me. I take a deep breath. How many other family members have you approached for money? Another silence. Then Aunt Martha speaks, her voice smaller than I've ever heard it. They got $50,000 from me last year. For new fermentation equipment. She pauses. The equipment was never purchased. That was different, Dominic interjects. We had unexpected costs with the irrigation system, but this time it's different. The tasting room will transform our revenue stream. Dominic interjects with Dominic. Like the wine club transformed it 3 years ago? Aunt Martha asks quietly. Or the online store before that? Through the window, I watch Dominic's face redden. My phone buzzes with incoming texts. Uncle Robert. Don't let them pressure you, Clarissa. Cousin Stephanie. Are you going to do your part for the family legacy? Grandmother's nurse. Your grandmother hopes you'll consider what family unity means to her at her age. The subtext is clear. Refuse, and I risk losing my relationship with my 7-year-old grandmother, who still believes in family unity above all else. The thought sends a pang through my chest. I do quick mental calculations as the conversation continues in the background. 6 years of saving, thousands of hours of overtime. If I give them what they want, I'll need at least 4 more years to rebuild my savings. 4 years of delaying my own dreams for Dominic's EDI. I need to go, I say abruptly. I have a meeting. Clarissa, wait. Mother begins, but I've already ended the call. At Westbrook Design, I bury myself in work, trying not to think about the weight of family expectations crushing me from 40 miles away. Just before lunch, Elaine, my boss, stops by my desk. You okay? You seem distracted. Her eyes, sharp behind stylish frames, assess me with genuine concern. Family stuff. I say, attempting a smile. She nods, then glances at the Yosemite cabin, listing partially hidden beneath my drafting papers. That the property you've been saving for? Yes, but my family. They want me to invest in my brother's vineyard expansion instead. Elaine leans against my desk. You know, when I recommended you for promotion, there were 3 other candidates. You weren't the most senior, but you were the most deserving. She taps my latest project proposal. Your promotion wasn't luck, Clarissa. It was earned. Something loosens in my chest at her words. One small moment of validation in a lifetime of being overlooked. As I drive home that evening, I wonder if protecting my financial future is worth the family relationships I might lose. Should I stand firm against decades of favoritism? Or make one sacrifice to keep peace with the only family I have? The cabin listing sits on the passenger seat beside me, its promise of independence almost tangible. On my phone, 3 more missed calls from my mother. I turn toward home, decision still unmade. The next day at work, the notification pings while I'm reviewing blueprints at my desk. I ignored it at first, focused on the structural modifications for the Peterson project. When my phone buzzes a second time, I glance down. A string of alerts from Facebook. Odd. I tap the screen and freeze. Dominic's latest post fills my display, a sunset photograph of our family vineyard, rows of carefully tended vines stretching toward distant mountains. Below it, his caption reads, "Family support makes dreams come true. Excited to announce expansion plans for Matthew's Vineyard. Family legacy. Vineyard life." Comments flood the post. Cousin Melissa, so proud of you carrying on the Matthews tradition. Aunt Joanne, a good sister always supports her brother. Family first. Uncle Stephen, can't wait to see the tasting room with your name on it. My fingers hover over the screen. They've all assumed I'm part of this. Without my consent or even my knowledge, I've been cast as the supportive sister bankrolling my brother's vanity project. I close Facebook before I type something I'll regret. The office phone rings. I answer without checking the caller ID. "Clarissa, it's your mother." My shoulders tense instantly. "I'm at work, Mom." "This will only take a moment. Your father and I are hosting a family reunion next weekend at the Vineyard. Dominic will be presenting his expansion vision to everyone. We expect you there, of course." Not a request, a summons. The familiar pressure builds in my chest. I'll have to check my schedule, I say, knowing it won't matter what conflicts I cite. "Family comes first, Clarissa. Saturday at 4. She hangs up before I can respond. My hand trembles slightly as I place the receiver down. They're escalating, moving this from private manipulation to public pressure. The reunion isn't about family, it's about cornering me in front of witnesses. When my cell phone rings 20 minutes later, I nearly jump out of my skin. The area code matches my hometown. I let it go to voicemail. The same thing happens twice more that afternoon, calls from my family's area code that I can't bring myself to answer. By the third call, my heart races at the mere sound of the ringtone. I silence my phone completely. Later that evening, I check my voicemail. The first is from my bank. My mortgage officer, Mike Belton, sounds oddly hesitant. "Miss Matthews, we need to discuss your pre-approval for the Yosemite property. Some concerns have been raised about your financial commitments. Please call me back as soon as possible." The room tilts slightly. Concerns? What concerns? The second message clarifies everything. Uncle Robert's voice. "Clarissa, just had a nice chat with Mike Belton. We go way back to high school. Mentioned you might be overextending yourself with this cabin idea while the family business needs support. Call me." I sink onto my couch, nausea rising. They're sabotaging my mortgage. My own family is actively working to destroy my financial future to secure their own. For the next hour, I methodically document every communication, screenshots of Dominic's post and the comments, my mother's call, the voicemails. I send an email to my bank, requesting all interactions regarding my mortgage application be conducted in writing and password protected. I change every password on my financial accounts. I contact the credit bureaus to place alerts on my credit reports. By midnight, my dining table is covered with papers, financial records, property information, loan documents. I'm constructing a fortress around my savings, brick by meticulous brick. My phone rings again. Unknown number. I almost ignore it, but something makes me answer. "Clarissa, it's Sandra, your real estate agent." My grip tightens on the phone. Has something happened with the mortgage? "Nothing like that," Sandra says, her voice brightening. "Actually, I have amazing news. Remember that property in Oakhurst we discussed? The owners just dropped the price by 15%. It's perfect for you, 3 acres, that gorgeous view of the mountains, and it's just 10 minutes from the park entrance." For the first time in days, I feel something other than dread. Is it still within my budget? With the price reduction? Absolutely. Sometimes the universe makes a decision clear. She pauses, then laughs. "And wait until you hear what the locals call that ridge, Independent Ridge." I find myself laughing with her. The name couldn't be more perfect. I want to see it. This weekend, if possible. I'll set it up, Sandra promises. After we hang up, I stand at my window, looking out at the city lights. For a moment, I can almost see it, my cabin on that ridge. A place that belongs solely to me, built with money I earned through my own talent and determination. The doorbell rings, shattering my reverie. It's nearly 1 a.m. I peer through the peephole and see my mother standing in the hallway holding a wine bottle. I open the door without greeting her. She steps inside, presenting the bottle like an offering. Matthew's Reserve Cabernet, 1,989. She says, "From the year you were born. We've been saving it for a special occasion." The bottle's label bears our family crest, the one that never quite felt like it belonged to me. The wine inside is nearly black in the dim light, dense and valuable. "This is just the beginning of what you'll receive if you invest in the family," she continues, setting the bottle on my counter. "A case of reserve wines every year. Your name on a plaque in the tasting room. Your children's future secured." The calculation of it all, bringing this bottle in the middle of the night, the implicit bribe ignites something in me. "My future isn't for sale," I say quietly, "not even to my family." Mother's smile falters. "Don't be dramatic, Clarissa. This is about legacy." "No, it's about Dominic. It always has been. We've always supported both our children equally." The lie hangs between us, so blatant it almost takes physical form. 3 decades of seeking their approval flash through my mind. The academic achievements, the career successes, the financial discipline, all in pursuit of the recognition Dominic received simply for existing. "I think you should leave," I say. She reaches for the wine bottle, but I place my hand over hers. "Leave the wine. I might need it while I'm signing the papers for my cabin." The next morning at work, I find James at the coffee machine. Without preamble, I ask, "Can you help me draft an email?" "Threatening to quit already?" He jokes, then sees my expression. "What's going on?" I explain the situation while we walk back to his office. He listens without interruption, without judgment. When I finish, he simply nods and opens his laptop. "Family financial boundaries email," he says, typing. "Let's make this crystal clear without burning bridges you might want later." For the next hour, we craft a message that's professional, direct, and unambiguous. No emotional appeals, no justifications. Just clear statements of my financial autonomy and the consequences of further interference. "This is perfect," I say when we finish. "Thank you for helping me." "That's what friends do," James says simply. That evening, I call Sandra and schedule the cabin viewing for Saturday afternoon, the exact time of my family's reunion. While on the phone, I send the email James and I crafted to my entire family. The moment after I hit send, a weight lifts from my shoulders. At my dining table, I create a detailed spreadsheet comparing the financial returns of investing in my cabin versus the Vineyard, property appreciation rates, rental income potential, tax advantages. The numbers don't lie, my cabin is objectively the better investment. My phone rings. It's my bank. "Miss Matthews? This is Eliza Cooper from First Sierra Bank. I understand you've been working with Mountainside Financial on your cabin purchase, but I wanted to introduce myself. We specialize in vacation properties in the Yosemite area and can offer you significantly better terms than your current pre-approval." I smile as I add this new information to my spreadsheet. The universe does indeed seem to be making the decision clear. On Saturday evening, I drive through the iron gates of Matthew's Vineyard. That day I went to visit my new property, and since I gathered the necessary documents, I went to confront my family. The gravel crunches under my tires as I park beside a row of familiar vehicles. Through the tasting room windows, I can see them all already seated around the massive oak table. My parents, Dominic, Aunt Martha, Uncle Robert, the family lawyer. On the table in front of my empty chair sits a stack of LLC documents, waiting for my signature. I straighten my shoulders and reach for my briefcase containing my cabin's pre-approval letter, my financial analysis, and the deed reservation for my property on Independent Ridge. Time to show them exactly what I've learned about investments. I stand at the head of the massive oak table that has witnessed 4 generations of Matthew's family gatherings. Everyone's eyes are on me, some curious, furious due to being late, others wary, a few downright hostile. Aunt Martha fiddles with her pearl necklace. Uncle Robert drums his fingers against his coffee mug. Dominic sits directly opposite me, arms crossed, jaw set. The manila folder in my hands contains 10 years of Vineyard financial reports that took me 3 sleepless nights to compile. I've highlighted the key sections in yellow, impossible to miss or dismiss. Thank you all for inviting me, I say, my voice steadier than it's ever been in this room. Before we discuss any investment in Dominic's tasting room expansion, I'd like to review the Vineyard's actual performance. I lay out the first report, sliding copies toward each family member. For the past decade, the Matthews Vineyard has operated at a profit margin of less than 2%. That's significantly below industry standard. Dad shifts in his chair. Mom's smile tightens. In 2019, there was actually a loss of $35,000. I continue, making deliberate eye contact with each person around the table. And in 2021, despite record tourism in the valley, profits were only $12,000. Aunt Martha glances at Dominic, her eyebrows pulling together in silent question. Last year's harvest yielded 20% fewer grapes than projected, I say, placing another document on the table. Yet the projection for this year claims a 30% increase with no explanation for the turnaround. Those numbers don't tell the whole story, Dominic interrupts, his voice cutting across the room. You've never cared about the family legacy. You don't understand what it takes to run a vineyard. You just sit in your fancy office drawing pictures of buildings while I'm working the land every day. The room falls silent. I wait, expecting Dad to jump to Dominic's defense as he always has. Instead, Uncle Robert clears his throat. Actually, I recall Clarissa trying to learn about the vineyard operations when she was younger. He looks directly at Dad. Wasn't she the one who kept asking to help with the harvest? To learn about fermentation? Dad's face reddens. That's right, Aunt Martha says, her voice gentle but firm. I remember Clarissa asking me about bookkeeping for the vineyard when she was in high school, said she wanted to help with the business side. I was told it wasn't my place, I say quietly. That Dominic would handle the vineyard business. Mom leans forward. That was years ago, Clarissa. This is about now, about family loyalty. Is it loyalty to invest in a business I was never allowed to participate in? I ask. A business that, according to these numbers, hasn't been profitable enough to sustain itself for over a decade? Several relatives exchange glances. The atmosphere in the room shifts perceptibly. Grandmother Helen, who has been silent until now, reaches across the table to touch my hand. Would you consider a smaller investment, dear, just to keep peace in the family? I hesitate. Would a token contribution maintain relationships while protecting my dreams, or would any compromise simply enable more demands in the future? The cabin plans flash through my mind, my own piece of land, my own legacy. Before I can answer, my phone buzzes. Elaine's name appears on the screen. Excuse me, I say, stepping away from the table. I need to take this. Clarissa, Elaine says, her voice crisp and professional. I'm sorry to interrupt your family gathering, but we have an emergency with the Westridge project. The client is demanding immediate revisions to the East Wing before Monday's presentation. Relief washes through me. We'd planned this call a lifeline if the family pressure became too intense. I understand, I reply, keeping my voice appropriately concerned. I'll be there as soon as I can. When I return to the table, expressions range from disappointment to suspicion. I'm sorry, I announce. There's an emergency at work. I need to leave immediately. This is more important than your job, Dad insists. We need an answer today, Mom adds. Dominic slams his hand on the table. This is exactly why the vineyard is struggling, because no one in this family is willing to sacrifice anything for its success. His face flushes dark red. You think I haven't put everything I have into this place? We're drowning in debt. The bank is threatening foreclosure if we don't show major improvements by next quarter. The room falls silent. Several relatives stare at Dominic with new awareness. Foreclosure? Uncle Robert repeats. You never mentioned that. Why would my $100,000 make a difference if things are that dire? I ask quietly. Dominic doesn't answer. The question hangs in the air between us. I think we all need time to process this new information. Aunt Martha says carefully. Perhaps we should reconvene next weekend, after everyone's had a chance to review the numbers Clarissa provided. Dad opens his mouth to object, but Mom places a hand on his arm. That's reasonable, she says, though her eyes flash with frustration. We'll meet here at the vineyard next Saturday, for a final decision. As I gather my papers, I catch Grandmother Helen watching me, her weathered face thoughtful. She gives me a single, almost imperceptible nod. I walk out of the dining room with my head high, the knowledge of my scheduled cabin viewing the following morning a secret strength carrying me forward. The final blow comes next week on Saturday. I arrive at the vineyard with the sun casting long shadows across the rows of grapevines. The tasting room doors stand open, welcoming the cool autumn breeze that carries the scent of fermenting grapes and freshly tilled soil. My hands grip the steering wheel tighter as I spot Dominic's truck parked beside our parents' sedan. They're waiting for me inside. I can feel it. Dad rises from his seat at the tasting room's oak table when I enter, his smile too wide, too practiced. Mom fusses with a tray of cheese and crackers, avoiding my eyes. Dominic stands by the window, watching the vineyard workers tend to the morning harvest. Clarissa. Dad gestures to the empty chair. We were hoping you'd join us for breakfast before the family arrives later. I set my leather portfolio on the table but remain standing. I'm not hungry. Dominic turns from the window, straightening his vineyard logo polo shirt. We've been talking, and we have a special proposal for you. Mom slides into the chair beside Dad, finally meeting my gaze. We know how much your financial independence means to you, so we've adjusted our offer. An exclusive family arrangement, Dad adds, sliding a folder toward me. Instead of 10% ownership for your investment, we're offering 15%. I flip open the folder, scanning the new ownership agreement. The text blurs slightly as anger rises in my throat. 15%. Dominic repeats, his voice practiced, smooth. That's a 50% increase in your stake, Clarissa. No one else in the family is getting these terms. Dad leans forward, elbows on the table, fingers steepled. $100,000 for 15% ownership in a vineyard that's been in our family for 4 generations? Your great-grandfather would be proud to see you stepping up, Mom says, touching my wrist. Family supporting family. The subtext hangs heavy in the air. Refusing means choosing money over family. I close the folder slowly, gathering my thoughts. My heart hammers against my ribs, but my voice remains steady when I finally speak. I've already invested my money. The silence that follows stretches taut between us. Mom's fingers retreat from my wrist. What do you mean? Dominic demands, crossing the room in 3 quick strides. I unzip my portfolio and remove a stack of photographs, laying them one by one on the table. I bought a cabin in Oakhurst last week, 2 acres with views of Yosemite. The first photo shows a rustic A-frame nestled among towering pines. The second captures the panoramic mountain vista from the back deck. The third displays the deed with my name printed across it. You bought property without telling us? Mom whispers, her fingers hovering over the photos. Just like you discussed my finances without telling me. I meet her gaze, unflinching. I've invested in my own legacy, one I built myself. Dad's face darkens. This is incredibly selfish, Clarissa. Your brother has had every advantage I never did. I finish for him, and he's still asking for more. The tasting room door swings open as Uncle Robert arrives with Aunt Judith and grandmother. More family members filter in behind them, carrying potluck dishes for the reunion lunch. I hadn't expected so many so early. Perfect timing. Dominic forces a smile for the newcomers while hissing under his breath. We're not done discussing this. Actually, we are. I turn toward my extended family, raising my voice slightly. Since everyone's here, I'd like to share something important about the vineyard expansion. The room quiets as I retrieve my laptop from my portfolio. Opening a financial analysis spreadsheet, I connect to the tasting room's wall-mounted display. I've reviewed the vineyard's finances for the past decade. I begin, clicking through charts showing declining profit margins despite increased production. Based on current debt load and market projections, the tasting room expansion would require 5 investors at $100,000 each to become profitable within 5 years. Quote, Uncle Robert steps closer to examine the numbers. 500,000? Dominic said you'd need just 1 or 2 investors. Dominic lurches forward. Her numbers are wrong. She doesn't understand the business. Which numbers are wrong specifically? I ask, scrolling through the detailed analysis. The overhead costs you provided to the bank last quarter? Or the profit projections you shared with potential investors last month? Dominic's mouth opens and closes, no words emerging as he realizes I've accessed the same financial records he used to secure his business loan. These numbers contradict each other. I continue, highlighting discrepancies between documents. Either the Vineyard is struggling more than you've admitted, or you've misrepresented its potential to investors. Uncle Robert removes his glasses, rubbing the bridge of his nose. Maybe it's time to consider professional vineyard management instead of more family investment. The room erupts in murmured conversations. I catch grandmother's gaze across the crowd, expecting disappointment. Instead, she offers a slight nod, her eyes clear with something that might be respect. Later that evening, as I drive back to my condo, my phone buzzes with texts about rumors that 3 potential investors have withdrawn their interest in the vineyard. My parents haven't called or messaged since I left the reunion. When my phone chimes again at midnight, I expect another angry family member. Instead, Dominic's name appears with a message. We need to talk privately. I have a new proposal. I set the phone down without replying, watching city lights shimmer through my window. Whatever his new proposal might be, I'll face it on my terms, not his. For the first time in my life, that feels like enough. Based on current debt load and market projections, the tasting room expansion would require 5 investors at $100,000 each to become profitable within 5 years. Quote, Uncle Robert steps closer to examine the numbers. 500,000? Dominic said you'd need just 1 or 2 investors. Dominic lurches forward. Her numbers are wrong. She doesn't understand the business. Which numbers are wrong specifically? I ask, scrolling through the detailed analysis. The overhead costs you provided to the bank last quarter? Or the profit projections you shared with potential investors last month? Dominic's mouth opens and closes, no words emerging as he realizes I've accessed the same financial records he used to secure his business loan. These numbers contradict each other. I continue, highlighting discrepancies between documents. Either the Vineyard is struggling more than you've admitted, or you've misrepresented its potential to investors. Uncle Robert removes his glasses, rubbing the bridge of his nose. Maybe it's time to consider professional vineyard management instead of more family investment. The room erupts in murmured conversations. I catch grandmother's gaze across the crowd, expecting disappointment. Instead, she offers a slight nod, her eyes clear with something that might be respect. Later that evening, as I drive back to my condo, my phone buzzes with texts about rumors that 3 potential investors have withdrawn their interest in the vineyard. My parents haven't called or messaged since I left the reunion. When my phone chimes again at midnight, I expect another angry family member. Instead, Dominic's name appears with a message. We need to talk privately. I have a new proposal. I set the phone down without replying, watching city lights shimmer through my window. Whatever his new proposal might be, I'll face it on my terms, not his. For the first time in my life, that feels like enough. I fidget with my watch as Attorney Whitman arranges his papers, the heavy mahogany table reflecting the overhead lights that feel a touch too bright this morning. Around me, family members murmur in hushed tones. My brother Ethan lounges in his chair across from me, designer suit perfectly pressed, not a hair out of place. The smirk on his face makes my stomach tighten. Shall we begin? Whitman asks, his voice carrying the appropriate gravity for the occasion. I nod, smoothing the fabric of my simple black blazer. Nothing flashy, just practical and professional, like always. It's what Dad would have expected. Dad. The empty chair at the head of the table feels like a presence all its own. Ethan clears his throat, leaning forward with a confidence I recognize all too well. Before we get started, he says, voice carrying to every corner of the room, I just want to say Dad always said the company man gets the company. Several relatives chuckle. Uncle Robert pats Ethan's shoulder. Aunt Martha nods knowingly. I keep my face neutral, the way I've learned to over 12 years of working at Carter and Mason Developments, 12 years of arriving first and leaving last. 12 years of solving problems while Ethan collected the praise. 12 years of being invisible in plain sight. The memories fled back unbidden. Standing on the stage at business school graduation, magna cum laude, scanning the audience for my father's proud face. Finding it, finally, but seeing only polite acknowledgement there. That's nice, honey, he'd said later, before turning to Ethan. Did you tell your sister about your golf score? 3 under par, Chelsea. The club pro says he's never seen such a natural swing. I blink the memory away. That was 10 years ago. What matters is what I've built since then. The projects saved, the clients retained, the profits increased. Like that first major rescue when I was 24, stepping in when the Peterson development was on the brink of collapse. I'd worked through weekends, negotiated with subcontractors personally, revised budgets line by line. All while Ethan was skiing in Aspen Vale, cruising around Croatia, parties in Miami, etc., while I was the one working for this company and my father's legacy. Attorney Whitman adjusts his glasses, drawing me back to the present. Before I continue with the formal reading, I should explain that your father made significant changes to his estate planning in 2018. The room falls silent. Papers slide across the table toward each of us. I take mine without looking, watching instead as Ethan's expression freezes, the smug smile faltering as his eyes dart across the page. I look down at my own document, the legal language, swimming before my eyes, until a single sentence comes into focus. Carter and Mason Developments, in its entirety, was transferred to Chelsea Carter's sole ownership 5 years ago. The air leaves my lungs. This can't be right. As you can see, Whitman continues, his voice steady and clear. Carter and Mason Developments was legally transferred to Chelsea's sole ownership in November of 2018. The company's current valuation stands at $2.8 million, with a growth of 35% under her management during this period. I hear the rustling of papers as relatives frantically flip through their documents. Ethan's face has drained of all color, his mouth opening and closing without sound. There must be some mistake, he finally manages, voice cracking. Dad would never. There's no mistake, Ethan. The calm in my voice surprises even me. Do you remember the Riverfront Plaza project? The $18 million commercial development you were supposed to be handling while you were actually in Vail for 3 weeks? His eyes widen slightly. I found subcontractors ready to walk off the job, permits about to expire, and cost overruns approaching 7 figures. I tap my finger on the document. I spent 6 weeks rebuilding the entire project from the ground up. Dad came to the site one day unannounced. He saw me negotiating with the steel suppliers, reviewing architectural changes, and calming the investors all in one afternoon. The room is utterly silent now. Aunt Martha shifts uncomfortably in her seat. Uncle Robert examines his hands. Cousin James suddenly seems fascinated by the ceiling. I didn't know about this transfer, I admit, meeting Whitman's gaze. Dad never told me. Whitman nods. He was explicit that you were not to be informed until after his passing. He said, and I quote, "Let her keep proving herself without knowing she already owns it. That's the Carter way." A weight lifts from my shoulders, even as a new one settles in its place. All those years of silent work, of pushing forward without recognition, they hadn't gone unnoticed after all. But now the company is truly mine, with all its responsibilities, all its employees, all its future resting in my hands. I look across the table at my brother, whose world has just shifted beneath him, and realize mine has too. The company man didn't get the company after all. The company woman did. But what about the family home? The investments? Ethan interrupts, his voice cracking with desperation. His fingers grip the edge of the mahogany table as if it might keep him from drowning. Attorney Whitman adjusts his glasses, his expression unchanged. The Denver property transfers to Ethan Carter, along with its existing mortgage balance of $250,000. The words hit like stones. I watch Ethan's face transition from confusion to disbelief, to the beginning stages of panic. The mortgage? He repeats, as if the word is foreign to him. But the investments. Dad had that portfolio with Merrill Lynch. Whitman clears his throat. I regret to inform you that the family investments were largely depleted during your father's final illness. The medical costs were substantial. A soft murmur ripples through the room. Uncle Robert shifts uncomfortably. Aunt Martha presses her hand to her throat, her chunky gold bracelet catching the light. So I get a house with a mortgage? Ethan's voice rises an octave. That's it? The realization washes over him visibly. His expected windfall is actually a financial burden. The designer suit suddenly looks like an expensive mistake. But what about Chelsea? Aunt Martha whispers loudly from her corner. Surely George left her something? Uncle Robert waves his hand dismissively. Probably some of Margaret's china. You know how George felt about the business staying with the men in the family. I focus on my breathing, keeping my expression neutral as they discuss me as if I'm not present, the same way they've always done. Ethan straightens his tie, reaching for anything that might salvage his reputation. Well, at least I got the house. Prime Denver real estate. Worth at least $1 million in today's market. His voice carries the forced bravado of a man trying to convince himself as much as everyone else. A small smile appears at the corner of Whitman's mouth. He glances at me with a look I can't quite interpret. We haven't finished yet. The memory surfaces unexpectedly. 3 years ago. The night I saved the riverfront project. My father calling at 2 a.m. after reviewing the recalculated projections I'd emailed him. "I didn't think you had it in you," he'd said, his voice gruff with something I couldn't identify at the time. "The contractors are all back on schedule?" "Yes," I'd answered, exhausted but proud. "And I got them to agree to the original price points." A pause on the line, then, "I see you now, Chelsea." It was the first time he'd ever said anything like that to me. I'd gripped the phone so hard my fingers ached. Across the table, Marjorie Davis, the company bookkeeper who has worked for Carter and Mason for 30 years, catches my eye and nods almost imperceptibly. She knows. She's always known. Whitman reaches beneath the table and produces an ornate wooden box, its surface gleaming with age and polish. He places it carefully in front of me, and to my daughter Chelsea, he reads from the will. "I leave my father's collection. Prom." A poorly concealed snicker comes from Uncle Robert's direction. Cousin James smirks. I hear Aunt Martha whisper, "Just as we thought. The trinkets." My fingers trace the inlaid pattern on the box lid. I've seen it before, sitting on my father's dresser for as long as I can remember. Always locked, always private. I open it slowly. Nestled on deep blue velvet are rows of vintage watches. Patek Philippe, Rolex, Vacheron Constantin. Each one gleaming, immaculate, perfect. My grandfather's passion. My father's secret pride. 51 pieces in total. Whitman announces, his voice cutting through the sudden silence. Professionally appraised last year at $460,000. The room freezes. Ethan's mouth opens and closes without sound, like a fish suddenly finding itself on dry land. "That's," he finally splutters, "that's not possible." "I assure you, it's quite accurate," Whitman responds, sliding a formal appraisal document across the table. "Your father was meticulous about maintaining both the collection and its documentation." Aunt Martha, who seconds ago was dismissing my inheritance, now leans forward with renewed interest. Uncle Robert's eyebrows lift toward his receding hairline. "So, Chelsea gets the company worth $2.8 million, Ethan says slowly, as if working through a difficult equation. "Plus watches worth almost $500,000? I do the mental calculation myself. $2.8 million plus $460,000. A $3.26 million inheritance versus a house with a $250,000 mortgage. The imbalance is staggering. Relatives who moments ago were chuckling at my expense now approach with sudden respect. Uncle Robert clears his throat awkwardly. "Always thought you had a good head for business, Chelsea." Ethan pushes back from the table, his chair scraping loudly against the hardwood floor. His face has flushed an unhealthy red. He leans close as he passes behind my chair. "This isn't over," he hisses, his breath hot against my ear. "Dad wasn't in his right mind when he changed the will. You know that." Aunt Martha materializes beside me, her hand resting on my shoulder with newfound warmth. "My friend Patrick handles estate contests, dear. Just something to consider, given the unusual circumstances." Uncle Robert joins the chorus from across the table. "Family should stick together, Chelsea. I'm sure you'll do the right thing and share with your brother." I close the watch box with a definitive click that silences the room. For the first time in my life, I don't feel the need to make myself smaller for their comfort. I worked 80-hour weeks for 12 years. I say, my voice steady and clear. I managed projects Ethan abandoned. I secured clients he alienated. I earned every bit of this. I stand, gathering the documents and the watch box. The weight of it feels right in my arms, substantial, valuable, mine. The family man didn't get the company or the fortune. The family woman did. And for once, I'm not apologizing for it. 3 days later, the fluorescent light in my office flickers, a familiar irritation I've learned to ignore. I straighten the modest wooden nameplate on my desk, Chelsea Carter, Executive Vice President, a title that took 8 years longer to earn than it should have. I trace my finger along the edge of my grandfather's watch, now mine, its weight still unfamiliar on my wrist. 3 days since the will reading, and the office feels different. My office. My company. The phone rings for the fourth time this hour. Chelsea Carter. I answer, my voice steadier than my hands. Chelsea, dear. Aunt Martha's honey-sweet tone carries warning signs. The family is concerned. We really should discuss what's happening with the company. There's nothing to discuss, Aunt Martha. The legal transfer was completed 5 years ago. But surely you understand how this looks? Your father clearly wasn't thinking clearly when he... I have another call. We'll talk soon. I hang up before the familiar rage can color my voice. I swivel my chair toward the window, where construction cranes punctuate the Denver skyline. Each one represents projects I've overseen, clients I've reassured, problems I've solved. The view reminds me of my first day, 12 years ago. Just handle the filing, honey, Dad had said, showing me to a windowless room in the basement. Ethan will show you around when he gets back from his meeting. The meeting turned out to be a 3-hour lunch with Dad's golfing buddies. I spent that first day organizing 6 months of backlogged permits that threatened to shut down 3 active projects. The memory stings less now, knowing what I know. A sharp knock precedes Barbara poking her head in. She's been the office manager since before I was born. Her silver hair and no-nonsense glasses as much a fixture of Carter and Mason as the blueprint table in the conference room. He's here, she says, face tight with warning. And he brought reinforcements. I barely have time to stand before Ethan barges in, followed by Uncle Robert. My brother's designer suit can't hide the anger radiating from him. His face is flushed, hair slightly disheveled, unusual for someone who spends more on grooming products than I do on rent. This ends now, Ethan announces, slamming the door behind them. We need a family meeting to discuss what Dad really wanted. I fold my arms across my chest. What Dad wanted is perfectly clear in the legal documents you received. Documents that will be contested. Uncle Robert steps forward, his bulky frame imposing in my modest office. George wasn't himself in those later years. He was sharp enough to notice who was actually running his company, I reply, surprised by my own calm. Ethan paces, hands gesturing wildly. You've always been his little pet project. Poor Chelsea. So serious, so hardworking. He stops, leaning across my desk. But we both know you manipulated him, getting him alone when he was vulnerable after Mom died. The accusation lands like a physical blow. I think of nights spent sleeping on the office couch, of the Peterson project that nearly bankrupted us, of how close we came to losing everything because of Ethan's negligence. You want to talk about manipulation? I open my desk drawer slowly. Let's discuss the Peterson development. Ethan's expression flickers, uncertainty crossing his face. $18 million, Ethan. Our largest contract ever. I pull out a thick folder. You were supposedly managing it while Dad recovered from his heart surgery. Ancient history, he dismisses with a wave. 3 years ago isn't ancient. Not when I found subcontractors threatening to walk because they hadn't been paid in 6 weeks. Not when permits were expired. Not when cost overruns were approaching 7 figures. I opened the folder. And certainly not when I discovered where some of that money went. Uncle Robert shifts uncomfortably. We're not here to dredge up old business disputes. Really? Because I have the bank records showing $215,000 transferred to Ethan's personal account during that period. I slide the statement across the desk. Money earmarked for the steel supplier who nearly put a lien on the property. Ethan's face drains of color. Dad approved those transfers. For business development. At a ski resort? I push another document forward. With your girlfriend at the time? That's an interesting business strategy. The room falls silent. Outside my window, Denver continues its busy rhythm, oblivious to our family drama. I think about the darkest moment, 3 years ago, when I discovered the depth of Ethan's betrayal. I'd been working through the night, calling in favors from every contact I had, renegotiating with suppliers who'd been burned by delayed payments. Dad had initially blamed me when the project first showed trouble signs. I put Ethan in charge for a reason, Chelsea. Stop interfering. But then he'd shown up unannounced at the site one afternoon. Found me in a hard hat and work boots, going over revised blueprints with the foreman, calming nervous investors on my cell phone while simultaneously negotiating with the city inspector. Dad had stood silently watching for nearly an hour before approaching. I didn't know, was all he'd said. A week later, he'd given me full authority over the project. 2 months after that, I discovered the ownership transfer documents in the company safe. He'd never mentioned them, never acknowledged what he'd done. just watched me continue to work, continue to prove myself, day after day, while Ethan collected praise for turning the project around. I found something else last night, I say, pulling out one final folder, in Dad's home office. Ethan and Uncle Robert exchange glances, his private notes. I open the folder carefully, about the company, about us. The handwritten pages reveal a different George Carter than the one I thought I knew. Meticulous observations about projects, personnel, and his children. I read aloud. Chelsea salvaged the Peterson contract. Maybe I've been backing the wrong horse all these years. Uncle Robert clears his throat. Your father always had a flair for dramatic language. The transfer documents are dated 1 week after that note. I close the folder. Along with this. I slide a single piece of paper across the desk. A handwritten note in my father's distinctive script. You earned this, Chelsea. A knock at the door interrupts before Ethan can respond. Tom Mackenzie, our senior project manager, enters with coffee and an unmistakably protective stance. Sorry to interrupt, miss. Carter, but we have that meeting in 5 minutes. He sets a coffee on my desk. Just wanted to make sure you had time to prepare. Ethan glares at Tom, who returns the look with steady indifference. Tom has been with the company for 20 years, has seen everything. She was here every Saturday while you were in Aspen. Tom says quietly to Ethan. Every Sunday too. Some of us noticed, even if your father didn't seem to. Barbara appears in the doorway again. Miss Carter, the Wallace Group is online too. They're expressing relief that you're still at the helm. The office falls into an awkward silence, as my support network makes itself visible. People who've watched me work, who've seen the reality behind the family facade. Ethan straightens his tie, attempting to regain composure. This isn't over. We'll be back, with our attorney. I look forward to it, I reply, surprising myself with the truth in those words. After they leave, I sink back into my chair, the weight of the confrontation settling on my shoulders. The phone rings again. Another relative calling to express concern. I let it go to voicemail, instead opening my laptop to the email that just arrived from our biggest client. Chelsea, heard about your father. Glad to know you're officially in charge now. We always knew who really ran things. For the first time in 12 years, I don't have to hide my smile when I reply. The next morning, Ethan returns as promised. This time with an attorney, a nervous man with thinning hair and a leather briefcase that looks more expensive than its contents deserve. We're contesting the will, Ethan announces without preamble. Dad wasn't of sound mind when he made these changes. I nod, having expected this move. I understand. And I have 3 years of financial records showing your contributions to this company. I gesture to the chair. Would you like to review them before you file? The attorney shifts uncomfortably. Perhaps we should see these records. I slide a USB drive across the desk. Everything's here. Attendance records, project outcomes, financial transactions. I meet Ethan's eyes directly, including those from personal accounts. The attorney plugs the drive into his laptop. His eyebrows rise steadily as he scrolls through the files. Mr. Carter, he says after several minutes. I think we should discuss this in private. Ethan's face reddens. There's nothing to discuss. She manipulated our father. What I did, I say, standing up, was save this company, repeatedly, while you treated it like your personal ATM. I walk to the door and open it. I've earned every bit of this, Ethan, not through manipulation, but through work you couldn't be bothered to do. The attorney closes his laptop. Miss Carter, perhaps we could discuss some kind of settlement? There's nothing to settle, I reply, but I'll give you both some time to review those records. They tell quite a story. After they leave, I stand at my window watching the Denver traffic below. I wonder if anyone else has had to stand their ground against someone who underestimated them so thoroughly for so long. The thought brings unexpected strength. My phone vibrates with a text from Barbara. Your 2 appointment is here, and Ethan's lawyer just left. Alone. I straighten my jacket, adjust my grandfather's watch on my wrist, and prepare to step into the meeting. For the first time, I'll introduce myself as Chelsea Carter, President and CEO. I straighten the gold nameplate on my office door that now proudly displays President beneath my name. The morning light catches the engraving, sending a small flash across the hallway. 3 weeks have passed since the will reading, and each day has brought a fresh attack from Ethan and his supporters. My desk phone chirps. Miss Carter, Your 10 o'clock is here. The Weber Group representatives. Send them in, Diane. I smooth my burgundy blazer and take a deep breath. The Weber Group nearly pulled their contract when they heard rumors that Ethan might take over. Now they're back to discuss expanding their sustainable housing development. The glass door swings open, and Roger Weber extends his hand. Chelsea, wonderful to see you still at the helm. The company's in better hands than ever, I reply, gesturing toward the conference table where blueprints await. An hour later, Roger signs the contract for an expanded green housing initiative that will increase their original development by 30%. Your father would be proud, he says, capping his pen. Thank you, but I'm not doing this for my father anymore. The words surprise even me with their certainty. After they leave, I notice a Denver Business Journal email requesting an interview about women changing the landscape of Colorado construction. 5 years ago, I would have forwarded it to the PR department with instructions to decline. Today, I accept. The afternoon brings Diane to my doorway again. Your brother posted something. You might want to see. I pull up Ethan's social media profile to find a lengthy post claiming I manipulated our ailing father into changing his will. The comments section overflows with sympathy from country club acquaintances who've never set foot on a construction site. My phone buzzes with a text from Aunt Martha. Family concerned about company direction. Perhaps we should discuss. Purdy my business, Sid. I set the phone screen down on my desk and return to reviewing quarterly projections when my email pings with a message from Uncle Robert. Subject line, concerns for the family business. The final blow arrives at 4 o'clock, a legal letter demanding equitable financial compensation for Ethan based on years of contribution to company growth. I draft a simple press statement by 6, carefully referencing how the company has grown 35% under my management and detailing our commitment to sustainable development. I quote my father's written assessment of my leadership abilities, previously private but now necessary ammunition. By morning, 3 business partners have sent public testimonials supporting my leadership. Carter and Mason's reputation for integrity has only strengthened under Chelsea's direction, writes our largest investor. 2 former clients call to inquire about returning to our roster now that the company's future is secure. The Community Development Board nominates our latest project for an Environmental Innovation Award. A week passes. I'm reviewing staffing projections when Diane knocks softly. You might want to see this, she says, handing me a real estate listing. The family home Ethan's inheritance is now for sale. The listing description mentions motivated seller and price to move quickly. Later, Tom from project management stops by my office. My wife's cousin works at that real estate agency handling your family home. Says Ethan's agent told potential buyers the market isn't what it once was when they questioned the below-market price. The Denver Business Journal arrives the following Wednesday with our company featured prominently. Carter and Mason leads Green Building Revolution. I place it on my desk beside the blueprint for our newest development. My phone lights up with a message from cousin James, who loudly supported Ethan at the will reading, "Hey Chelsea, long time. Thought we might catch up over coffee sometime?" I'm leaving the office that evening when I spot Ethan's distinctive red sports car parked outside the Northside Employment Agency. The sight stops me cold. The brother who once claimed he was born to run Carter and Mason is now looking for work. Uncle Robert calls the next morning. Chelsea, about Ethan. The boy might need some guidance. Perhaps there's a position. I'm not hiring, Uncle Robert. Aunt Martha leaves a voicemail an hour later asking how the watch collection is doing and whether I'd considered having the pieces properly appraised. From my office window, I can just make out the for sale sign on the family home's lawn, a small red rectangle in the distance. I call my attorney that afternoon. I need you to document every communication, every post, every legal threat. I want it all on record. He agrees, then asks, and the expansion plans? Are we moving forward? Absolutely. I examine the blueprint for our new headquarters. We break ground next month. That evening, I sign papers on a modest but elegant home in a quiet neighborhood. The mortgage-free status feels like armor against whatever comes next. The realtor hands me the keys. Congratulations. Most people your age are still struggling with down payments. I smile, thinking of the watches secured in a climate-controlled vault, and the company that grows stronger each day. I've earned every inch of this. I spot Ethan through the glass wall of my reception area before Barbara can announce him. 3 months since the will reading, and the change is stark. His once immaculate appearance has deteriorated, wrinkled shirt untucked at one corner, hair lacking its usual precise styling. I straighten the papers on my desk and take a steadying breath. Miss Carter, your brother is here. He doesn't have an appointment, Barbara says through the intercom, her tone carrying a protective edge. Send him in, I reply, adjusting my grandfather's watch on my wrist. The weight of it reminds me how much has changed. Ethan enters with a practiced smile that doesn't reach his eyes. Chelsea, he says, voice warm with rehearsed sincerity. The new office looks great. Very executive. I gesture toward the chair across from my desk. What brings you by, Ethan? He settles into the seat, leaning forward with hands clasped. I've been doing a lot of thinking about Dad, about what he would want for us, for the company. I remain silent, letting him fill the space. Look, I know things got heated after the will reading. He adjusts his position, smoothing an invisible wrinkle from his pants. But we're family. Carter and Mason has always been a family business. We should be running this together. The audacity nearly makes me laugh. Instead, I keep my expression neutral, the same mask I've worn through countless meetings where men twice my age underestimated me. The housing market is terrible right now. He continues when I don't immediately respond. I can't sell the house for what it's worth. The mortgage is killing me. That sounds challenging, I say, my voice even. His expression shifts, a flash of irritation breaking through the facade. I'm being cut off from my birthright, Chelsea. The Carter name is on this building because of our father and grandfather. What do you think it does to our reputation when people hear about this family dispute? I notice the subtle threat wrapped in concern. Classic Ethan. I'm willing to forgive the past. He says, magnanimous now. We need to move forward. You need an executive vice president, someone with connections, someone who understands the Carter vision. I see. I open my desk drawer and withdraw a manila folder I've kept prepared for this very moment. Would you mind if I shared something with you first? Confusion flickers across his face, but he nods, assuming this is negotiation. I slide the folder across the desk. This contains documentation spanning the last 6 years at Carter and Mason. Ethan flips it open, frowning at the first page, a timeline meticulously crafted by Barbara, showing every major company crisis alongside Ethan's documented absences. Page 2 shows the Peterson development timeline. You'll note you were scheduled as project lead, but flight records confirm you were in Vail from January 3rd through January 28th that year. The project nearly collapsed. His jaw tightens. That was one project. Page 3. I continue calmly. The Westridge Commercial Complex. You reported attending all meetings with the Zoning Commission, yet records show your credit card was used at restaurants in Miami during those dates. I turn to page 4 myself. This spreadsheet tracks company performance quarter by quarter since I took full control. Revenue up 35%. Client retention improved 22%. Employee turnover reduced by half. Numbers can be manipulated, he mutters. Page 5 might interest you. I tap the document. Photos from your Instagram. Skiing in Switzerland during the Hartman crisis. Yachting off Croatia, when we nearly lost the Madison account. Golfing in Scotland, when 3 subcontractors threatened to walk. His face reddens. You've been building a case against me. I've been documenting reality, Ethan, something you've always had trouble facing. I turn to the final page. Dad's notes from his private journal, dated 2 weeks before he transferred ownership. Also, after he transferred the ownership. His concerns about your business acumen are quite specific. Ethan slams the folder shut. This is just Dad being Dad. Always critical, never satisfied. He changed his mind about me, I say quietly. He could have changed his mind about you too, if you'd given him reason. So what now? Ethan asks, voice taut. You've made your point. You want me to beg? I close the folder and return it to my drawer. I'm sorry, Ethan. We're not hiring. He stares at me, momentarily speechless. We shared a childhood? I continue. But we chose different paths as adults. I chose this company. You chose other priorities. Chelsea. I can recommend a financial advisor who might help with your current situation. One consultation, my treat. But the company is no longer a family discussion. His controlled facade crumbles completely. What am I supposed to do? He asks, voice cracking. I never thought I'd actually need to work. The raw admission hangs between us, perhaps the first honest thing he's said in years. That's something you'll need to figure out, I reply, standing to signal the end of our meeting. Ethan rises slowly, defeat visible in the slump of his shoulders. He walks to the door, pauses as if to say something more, then continues out through reception. Through the glass, I watch the staff's subtle reactions, eyes following him, then turning toward my office with quiet nods of respect. No one says a word as I walk to my window and look out at the Denver skyline. The company I rebuilt, the legacy I earned, the future I'll shape. Barbara clears her throat from the doorway. Your 3 o'clock is here. I turn from the window. Send them in. The past can stay where it belongs. I have work to do. When have you had to make a difficult decision that was right for you, even when others disagreed? Share your story in the comments. I pause in the doorway of my expanded executive suite, savoring the morning light as it spills across the polished surface of my grandfather's Patek Philippe on my wrist. 6 months since the will reading, and sometimes I still expect to wake up back at my cramped desk in the corner office. The Denver Business Journal cover hangs framed on the wall opposite my desk. Carter and Mason leads Denver's sustainable building revolution. My photo, not Ethan's, smiles back at me with quiet confidence. The company logo beneath the headline incorporates both my grandfather's original drafting compass and a modern solar panel silhouette honoring our roots while embracing our future. Miss Carter? My assistant Sarah appears at the door. Your 9 o'clock is here. The Women in Business Mentorship candidates. I smile. Send them in. And Sarah, make sure we have enough application packets for everyone. 5 young women file into my conference room, eyes wide as they take in the certificates and awards that now line the walls. I remember being their age, desperate for guidance that never came. Welcome to Carter and Mason Developments. I begin. This mentorship program is designed to give you what I never had a path forward in an industry that doesn't always make room for women at the table. Later that afternoon, I visit the accountant to finalize the details for the business scholarship I've established in my father's name at my alma mater. The irony doesn't escape me, honoring the man who rarely honored my accomplishments. Yet something about it feels right, like closing a circle. The first recipient will be selected next fall. The university representative confirms. Thank you. I sign the final document, my grandfather's watch catching the light. Make sure the selection committee understands merit matters more than connections. When I return to the office, there's a message from Aunt Martha. Our relationship remains tentative, a monthly lunch, careful conversations about weather and health. Today's voicemail suggests progress. Chelsea dear, I wondered if you might help Robert and me with some renovation plans. You always did have the best eye for detail. I smile slightly as I delete the message. The same aunt who once whispered that I'd probably get the china now seeks my professional opinion. I'll help them, of course. Some relationships can be rebuilt, if not fully restored. Others remain beyond repair. Ethan and I haven't spoken since that final confrontation in my office. I heard through the grapevine he's selling luxury cars now, actually working for a living. According to Tom, who bought a new sedan last month, Ethan's actually good at it. Turns out charm and confidence have their uses when backed by actual effort. The afternoon sun warms my office as I review the quarterly reports. Another record season, with 3 new sustainable developments breaking ground next month. The parking garage contract, the one Dad always insisted was impossible without compromising quality, sits signed and executed on my desk. We found a way after all. When the office empties for the day, I drive to Riverside Cemetery. The groundskeeper nods as I pass, familiar with my monthly visits now. I did it, Dad. I say to the granite headstone. Not how either of us expected. The wind rustles through nearby trees, the only answer I'll ever receive. It's enough. Back at home, I change into comfortable clothes and pour a glass of wine. On my coffee table sits the appraiser's report for the watch collection. I've donated the most valuable piece, a rare 1,940 seconds chronograph, to the Business School Museum. It felt right to share a piece of my inheritance with future generations of entrepreneurs. My phone buzzes with a text from the Denver Post reporter. Quote, approved. Thank you for the interview. I smile, remembering my words. Success isn't about what you inherit, but what you build. 6 months ago, those would have been empty platitudes. Now they're the foundation of my life. The sunset paints Denver's skyline in amber and gold outside my window. I trace the inscription inside my grandfather's watch. Time reveals truth. How right he was. Tomorrow brings new challenges, the expansion into neighboring counties, the sustainability initiative, the contractor negotiations. But tonight, I simply stand at the window, watching darkness settle over the city that's finally beginning to recognize the company woman who built something lasting. I turn off the light, leaving yesterday's shadows behind me,